You are very humble, but there must be some crazy things you've done when you were in campus. So any of those memories?
What was the craziest thing you did at IIT Kharagpur?
You mean crazier than calling somebody Abe Saleh in the gym? I mean, I think I had my share of all the experiences which all of you go through. Staying late in the nights and missing classes in the morning. But overall, we had a very, very good group of folks. Living in a campus like this, you come away from home far away for the first time. And my best memories are with my wingmates. You develop close friendships, and visiting the strip in Bangalore, I got to see a few of my old Kharagpur classmates. So good memories.
Oh, wow. So shifting gears a bit, 10 years after you left IIT, you joined Google. It was 2004 or 5?
2004.
Yeah. And 10 years later, you were running Google, the world's most innovative technology company, right? The Google products just grow on you. Google Search, YouTube, Android, Maps. What is it that drives innovation at Google?
I think we've always had an ambitious approach to it. We call it internally as 10x or moonshots. We try to work on things which, the criteria we think is we want to work on things which people will use every day. Mm-hmm. It will apply to billions of people, and it solves a real problem for them. So that's the bar. So anything we try to do, we think of it that way. And so we aim high. We try to use deep computer science to anything we approach so that we can have a differentiated approach to solving it. And you want to aim high enough that you fail, a few times. I think that's the natural part of the process. In fact, Larry used to say, if you work on really difficult things, you're better off because you have no competition. Others aren't working on that difficult a problem. And even if you fail, you end up doing something great in the process. And so I think that's the philosophy which has guided us all through these years.
So you don't touch anything which is not relevant for at least 1 billion users.
We think, if the product is successful, that everyone should be able to use it. It applies to everyone. And Maps is a good example of it. If you think about it, understanding the world around you is a real human need. It applies to everyone. So we tend to focus on those kinds of problems, and that's what drives this.
You've been talking lately a lot about machine learning and AI. AI was talked about even 25 years ago when I was at IIT and when you were at IIT. What has changed in the last 2 or 3 years? Why has AI become suddenly, and machine learning suddenly become the new buzzword?
I think the biggest advances you're seeing is largely due to two things. The techniques which we use in deep learning, deep neural networks, have been around for many years. But early on, they weren't that effective because you just didn't have the computational power to run these algorithms. Just for the past many years, the computational power has dramatically increased. So when you run deep learning on the latest computation, and with access to better data, you get dramatic breakthroughs. So for example, we recently launched Google Translate, and this is machine translation, and using our deep learning systems, the translation quality improvements just in the last year is bigger than what we've seen in the past 10 years cumulatively.
Wow.
So it tells us that the ability for computers to do these kinds of tasks, be it image recognition, speech recognition, voice recognition, it's really hitting a tipping point. So I think we are definitely in a point of inflection, and we are investing a lot as a company here. And I can't wait to get these benefits to as many users as possible. I think it'll really drive the next wave of computing.
Excellent. You were in Bangalore. You met startups in Bangalore. And I heard you say that there's nothing really missing as far as startups in India go. They're as good as startups elsewhere in the world. But there's one thing which sort of, we also invest in startups, and we face this problem as well ourselves as a company, that the Indian market is not large enough to invest a lot in technology. So, so how do you, in a situation like this, compete with MNCs, which have large investments in technology?
No, I think it's a good question. I think part of the problem is in India, the potential is there, and the market is developing. I think it'll take a few more years for it to fully realize the potential. for all its potential, we get excited about smartphones, but we are talking a number of 300 million in a country of 1.3 billion people.
Yeah.
And not all of them have good connectivity as well. So I think the digital market is still developing, and so that's the problem we run into. And so as companies getting built here, it's difficult to scale across India and reach that full potential, which gives you the resources to go compete internationally. But I think it's just a moment in time. Hopefully Indian companies are more thoughtful about, when they build stuff, also targeting similar areas like Vietnam and Indonesia and Thailand. I think those markets are developed, and and the same products would work in those markets as well. So I think they need to set their sights a bit bigger. But it's a good question. But I think the trend lines are strongly in the favor. I think every year I can see the rate at which things are changing. Yeah. So in about 3 to 4 years, I'm pretty convinced, at least in a 5 to 10 year time frame, that there will be big global, software companies coming out of India, and we will be very used to it.
So when these guys graduate and when they want to build the next Google, they should build for the international market as well, and not just for the Indian market?
Yeah, I mean, I would aim big, and I definitely think you can build from India, and we see that at Google, increasingly there are things which we think about building for the Indian market, but which we think will apply globally.
Yeah, yeah. So we are here sitting at IIT Kharagpur, and technology, as we know, is disrupting everything. It's disrupting education as well, right? Elementary education, even higher education. Today, you can get access to the best courses offered by the best universities in the world online, right? Mm-hmm. You can get access to courses from Stanford, MIT, everywhere on your desktop, right? So in a situation, and there are 5,000 engineering colleges in India and many other institutions. So what is sitting where you are, what would you recommend to them? How should they be looking at education? How should they be thinking about education going forward?
I think, it's one of the great things about India is this tremendous interest in education. People talk about it all the time. Most parents aspire for this for their children. And so I think it's a great foundation we have as a country. I think education needs to evolve and change just like with everything else. In my experience growing up here, I think there's a lot of emphasis on, spending time on the books and, learning things academically. Yeah. I think, working the real world, I would say, it is important to